So my name is Andrea Denham. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Peninsula Land Conservancy. We are based out of Marquette. That's where our office is, but we serve the entire Upper Peninsula. So in 12 counties of the Upper Peninsula, we manage land. And this is going to be kind of a lightning round here of an intro to UPLC and what we do, specifically what we do with working forests. So that's my email up there. And if I could have Drew, one of our board members, raise your hand. And then Brian, where'd you go? Brian does a lot of our on-the-ground forestry work. So if you have any technical questions, come find me, come find Drew, find Brian. And of course, I have email signups, brochures, all sorts of great information that you can come find me afterwards. But I'll try to save time for some questions. So first of all, who knows what a land trust is? Ooh, nice. Okay, we've got a couple in here. Land trusts are a 501c3 non-governmental, not-for-profit, mission-driven organization. Specifically, land trusts are a qualified conservation organization. That's a technical term within the IRS. That means that we work very specifically to protect critical conservation lands. Of course, the UP Land Conservancy. We work all the way across the Upper Peninsula. We started off as the Central Lake Superior Land Conservancy in 1999. So we are almost 25 years old, which is very exciting. The main ways that we work, our values are very specifically conservation for the sake of the ecosystem or the environment, for nature, conservation for the sake of our community, and excellence and integrity in everything that we do. Because of those values, we are the only UP-based, UP-wide land trust that's achieved national accreditation through the Land Trust Alliance, which means that we kind of got the Better Business Bureau stamp of approval in that you can, when we say we're going to protect land forever, we are backing that up with a promise of integrity, community focus, and ethical conduct, financial responsibility, that sort of a thing. So like I said, we have permanently protected about 6,546 acres of land. I'll get to it in a second. We're about to jump that up by another 180 acres within the next 7 days. Thank you. I'm very excited. Of that, we have 12 conservation easements, 24 working forests, and 27 conservation easements, 24 working forests, and 12 dedicated nature preserves. So again, this is kind of lightning round. We also do education, outreach. We have nature, we have trails. We work with the North Country National Scenic Trail to protect segments of the North Country Trail from, losing their access to trail when landowners change or having to put their trail out on roads. We work with McCain on Trail Network, the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. And we also work with Michigan State University Extension, Michigan Tech, Northern Michigan University, all sorts of folks to get hands-on learning in the forests across the Upper Peninsula so that we can, we've heard a lot this morning about the issue of not having a lot of new foresters coming into the field. We want to work with you all, everyone here in this room, to help be a part of that solution. Like I said, we do this in 3 main ways. We really focus on protection, access, and community. So has anyone here ever heard of a nature preserve? Anyone been on a nature preserve that you know of? Okay, I'll go through this one pretty quick. Nature preserves are a pretty standard idea. We own the property, fee simple. We manage it for its ecosystem services and for its community, the good things it brings to the community, whether it's a watershed that feeds drinking water or whether it's an area that is loved by a community that was under threat of development. We work with the community to save those. Who here knows what conservation easements? Anybody? Okay, more hands on conservation easements. Great. So I'll go over this one pretty quickly. Conservation easements are highly unique legal agreements between a private landowner and a qualified conservation organization such as ourselves, where we will work directly with that landowner to make sure that they can continue using the property, living on the property, hunting the property, doing sustainable timber management, responsible timber management on the property, but no matter who owns it in the future, if they pass it on or sell it, it will never be mowed down and turned into a McDonald's, right? So we act as a third party that comes in, and we actually own parts of the rights of that property, and we can come in and enforce that. If in the future a different landowner trespasses, or if a third party comes in and trespasses on that land, we can be a support to that landowner to help do restoration efforts. And what I'm really here to talk to you about today are our Forest for the Future reserves. So some of you in this room might know Fred Prince. Anyone? We got a couple of hands in the middle here. I knew I would. Awesome. So Fred Prince, before he passed, bought a lot of land in the UP. He was a huge lover of northern hardwood forests and of the forest production system. When he passed, he dissolved his company, or his nonprofit, where he held all these lands, called Forest for the Future, out to conservation organizations such as UPLC. So we took those properties and we are working at our hardest to carry on Fred's legacy and Fred's dream by specifically working with NIACs and Compass Land Consultants, Green Timber Consulting Foresters. We sat down and we said, hey, can we take these huge, large-scale climate change adaptation theories and scale them down? Can we say, we've got 40 acres over here, 100 acres over here. Can we take these huge 300-year plans that have different scenarios built out into them for carbon, for demographic shift, for transition of plants coming through, and can we bring that to everybody? You know, so we're part of this kind of larger experiment. I'd love to talk with you a little bit more after this, because we've got some research opportunities for you. You know, a lot of the properties that Fred passed on to us were undermanaged, overmanaged, poorly managed, had diseases moving in, were under threat for our hemlock woolly adelgid was coming in nearby. So we worked with a ton of people to kind of look at all of these from a landscape level and say, what is best for the Upper Peninsula with the changes that we see coming, and how can UPLC be a resource, and not only to the forests themselves, but to our landowners and our landowner community to continue having productive, healthy forests that provide ecosystem services across the UP. So I basically already said that one. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of our properties called the Devilac Forest Reserve. It's in Trinary area. I actually drove by it on my way here this morning. And we have done a couple of SAF tours on Devilac. Has anyone been on a UPLC tour to Devilac? A couple people? Okay, well, we'll be doing another one again. Michael, where are you? We'll be doing a tour with the American Bird Conservancy out there at some point here shortly. So sign up for my email list in the back and find me after. Yes. Yep, the vast majority of these properties are still in CFR. Yep. We're still managing them. They're under CFR. They're open to the public for hunting, fishing, all of that fun stuff. And some of them, we are specifically moving them towards being more educational centers for groups like this, for the Society of American Foresters to come out and learn from what we're doing. Great question. So our Devilac Reserve is kind of our baby. It's a good example of what we do. What we're trying to do with these properties is mimic natural turnover, natural changes such as forest mosaics, blowdowns, wind steps, that sort of a thing. So here on Devilac, we're using Femmelschlag. Is anyone? Couple people? Nice. Okay, so it's expanding gaps is what I think it roughly translates to. So what we're doing on Devilac, if you see on the photo, particularly in the south, is about every 10 years we're going in and we're cutting a hole. So we start off by cutting a circle, and then we underplant that with more desirable species. The Devilac was 98% single-aged, single species property. Cash crop, beautiful. You know, a lot of folks in this room would probably look at that and go, yes, you know, we can do a lot with this property. But there was no understory. It was extremely overbrowsed. It was silent in the spring. You know, there was no birds. There was no evidence of animals using this property at all. So we decided to come in and start mimicking these natural processes, natural turnovers. And so we cut a gap, we underplant it, we take out everything that's maple, we leave behind anything else, literally anything else, the ironwood, the cherry trees, whatever else might be growing. And then we underplanted it with hemlock, we underplanted it in different areas with white pine, spruce, that sort of a thing. And then in 10 years, we go out and we cut a ring around that first gap. And we do this kind of in a mosaic pattern across the entire property every 10 years. So we get the gap and then we expand it by a bit and we underplant that. And then in 10 years, we'll go back and we'll expand that. We'll do another ring around it, underplant that. And then the goal here is to within about 100 years, so this is a long-term plan, have the entire forest turn over and become an incredibly biodiverse, age diverse, and continuing to be productive in terms of its forest products as well in the face of climate change that we're looking at here. So one of the ways that we are tracking our success with this, we've only done 3 cuts, two and a half cuts, I think, 2 small cuts recently on the Devil-Act. One of the ways we're tracking this is by doing breeding bird surveys and nesting bird surveys. So we started, before we started cutting anything on Devil-Act, we would do bird surveys and then we'd come back in a few months later and see how many of those birds decided to stick around during their nesting season. And we've been doing this every year since 2014, I want to say. And I'm happy to state that not only are we seeing more birds coming in, different types of birds coming in, but we're also starting to see other types of animals and flowers and other types of natural biodiversity is returning to the area. So that's pretty fun. And this is where I'm going to have to kind of go really fast. I know I'm coming up on my time already, but our next step with our Forest for the Future program involves everybody in this room, I hope. It's collaboration time. There were 2 main goals when we started the Forest for the Future program. One of them was, of course, to restore biodiversity, continue productivity of forests, and work to take on this climate change adaptation plan and see if we could scale it down. The reason we're trying to scale it down is because we want now to reach out to other landowners and say, hey, this is accessible. We talk about, carbon markets only being accessible to people with 5,000, 7,000 acres, tons of land. And it's been, presented that you can only do climate change mitigation on large scale, on large properties. It doesn't even matter if you're only doing it on 10 acres, but we want to take these huge plans and scale them down so that anyone in this room, I don't own any land, but anyone who owns 5 acres, 10 acres, 40 acres, we want to go to them and say, this is how you can do that. You can also make a difference. The more of us doing something, the bigger of an impact it's going to have. So if you have ideas for collaboration, please come talk to me afterwards. We don't have to be the experts in how to do the adaptation, but we do have an audience that are interested and willing and want to have this information, which is kind of what we've been talking about all morning, which is really exciting. So we're kind of kicking off our education portion of our Forest for the Future program with a very exciting project called the Dead River Community Forest. Has anyone heard about this one yet? 1 hand, 2 hands, yay, okay. 3 hands, thanks, Michael. So the Dead River Community Forest is a very, very, very exciting project we've been working on for, 5 years now, and we will be closing on it on Wednesday. Yay. Thank you. We're calling it a community forest for a lot of different reasons, but we are going to be making it part of our Forest for the Future program. It is going to be an actively managed property where our very specific focus is to have it be an educational center for local landowners to come out and see the different ways that we are managing this 300 and some odd acre property for climate change adaptation. And we want to bring SAF to this property and do tours. We want to bring the American Bird Conservancy to the property to do collaborative tours. We're not necessarily the ones to go to their property and say, hey, now I'm going to pretend I'm a consulting forester. I'm not, but you all here in this room, we want you to be able to work with us to get that sort of information out to our local landowners. So the Dead River Community Forest is super exciting. It's got amazing cold water trout habitat. We all know there's forest for fish, right? Everyone's heard forest for fish? A little bit? Okay, it's a couple nods at least on that one. We're working with Trout Unlimited to make sure that we are including in our forest management plans cold water trout stream habitats. This piece of property has a critical floodplain forest. If anyone remembers the Silver Lake Dam disaster of 2003, this property that we're working on right here acted as a sponge. And yes, it was a disaster. It made a lot of damage downstream, but if this property didn't have the intact ecosystem that it does, the devastation would have been a lot worse downstream. It just soaked up all of that. It's also in the Forest to Tap program, which you look up this particular acreage. It is in the 90th percentile of importance to the city of Marquette's drinking water because of the groundwater filtration services that it provides. So we're also building in city drinking water into our forest management plans and in our forest management education to anyone who wants to come learn about it. There will be multi-use recreation trails on it because forestry and recreation are not mutually exclusive. They're actually good friends. And of course, I've been talking about educational partnerships as well. So, and then the big thing for it being a community forest is that it's kind of not just going to be UPLC owning the property, making all the management decisions. We have a Dead River Community Forest steering committee, and everything we do, we are asking for public input for what people want to see happen out there and how they want to see it implemented. So I am here asking all of you with your superior forestry knowledge to come give me your input as to what you think should happen on this piece of property, because it is a community forest for the community by the community. So let's make this happen. Like I said, we are closing very quickly, so we have enough money to purchase the property. We are still working on raising funds for the actual building of trails, starting the educational programming where we want to work with, we've been talking to Northern Michigan University's construction management program about building some of the boardwalks and some of the staircases that are going to need to go in. So if you have any collaborative ideas, come let me know. And of course, we've got a survey that we would love people to be answering or filling out to give us your input. Come find me, join the steering committee if you want. But it is kind of our way to bring forest management to anyone who's interested. You know, we've got an interesting audience that sometimes is probably a different audience than you all have. You know, I don't know how many of you have ever been told that cutting down trees is unethical and completely wrong, but I sure have. We're the nature organization that cuts down trees. So we are using the Dead River Community Forest and our Forest for the Future program to come to people who own land in the UP, whether they're longtime residents who are noticing big changes happening in weather and in the way trees are changing, or whether they are people who, as we were just talking about, there's been a huge change in land ownership up in the UP in the last 3 years. So we're getting people from Chicago, Colorado, who have just bought land in the UP. They call us and they say, how can we make sure that this land is protected? And we say, cut your trees. And we want to work with you all to get the information to these landowners about how to make sure that our forests in the UP remain productive, continue providing clean water, ecosystem services, and keep the UP the incredible place that we all love. So with that, I think that's just a couple minutes for questions. Yep.
How many acres is it?
Gosh, I think we cut maybe an acre, maybe just a single acre patched all over the 320 acres. So we might have done a 40-acre cut. Oh, there you go. That's Brian. That sounds about right. So for anyone who didn't hear that, Brian from Green Timber is one of our consulting foresters on the project, and the question was, how big was our first gap at the double X? And it was, our first cut was about 31 acres, and our second cut, that expanding ring, was about 35 acres. Thank you. Told you to ask him any technical questions. Go ahead.
You were saying that the first thing you tell the landowner is cut the trees. Why?
That was a bit of an exaggeration, but you know, so much of the question was, you know, why do we tell people to cut their trees? That was, of course, a bit of an exaggeration, but the principle is so much of the UP private land ownership has often been maybe overmanaged, undermanaged, poorly managed, hasn't been managed since the 1930s. So, you know, we want to encourage people to actively manage and to be involved with their forest, get to know them, get to know what the forest needs, and not just leave it sit.
So that would be getting rid of all.
It would depend on each property. Yeah. So we don't act as consulting foresters. We act as conduits of information. So great question.
Yeah,
Hey.
Thanks, good presentation. Now, where do you get your money?
That's a great question. So we are a nonprofit. You see that donate button up there? As a 501c3 non-governmental mission-driven organization, we do rely on donations from folks like you to do the work we do. We of course are harvesting some of our trees, so sometimes we do have a portion of those harvests get put back into the lands that we manage in our underplanting. Some of that does go into my paycheck. And then we do have some grants that we run. Mike Smalligan was here. Where'd you go? Right there, right in front of me. We did a really lovely small grant with the DNR last year. Those signs are up and they are beautiful, by the way. To do forestry education. So one of our other properties now has a 9-sign forestry signage trail. It's really cool. Does that answer your question? Anyone else? Okay.
Well, thank you.